I can just surrender to the circumstances that God has allowed in my life and trust that He has a purpose to them, that what He wants me to focus on is very clear. It's not getting ahead. It's the people. Hey there, Mama. This is True Presence, the podcast where Catholic moms like you and me learn to be embodied souls. St. Catherine of Siena said, "Be who you were meant to be, and you will set the world on fire." In the midst of hurry, worry, and social media, we're doing a 180 and focusing on real presence, communion, connection, natural living, and bringing eternity into our hearts and homes. I'm your host, Kelsey, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey guys, are you thinking about giving up social media for Lent this year? If so, I am going to be doing a private podcast to encourage any moms who want to do this, who want to focus on spending more time being present with their families. There's going to be a couple episodes coming out every week throughout Lent, and you have to sign up to get this because it is a private, not a public podcast, which means you need to get the link from me to access it. So I've put the sign up in the show notes below here, and I hope to see you there. This is one of those things where I wanted to do it as a podcast so that you don't get caught up in the, having to open up your browser to get the encouragement, but you don't feel so alone on this journey because it can be really tricky. I think especially as moms, we are often in our homes, not getting a lot of time with friends. And so we reach out to social media for companionship. And it can be really, hard to try and do something like this alone. And I want to be there for you. I want to help you with it. So go ahead, sign up below, grab that link, and those podcasts are going to be automatically showing up, and you won't get distracted by having to open a browser, by having to go on social media to get that encouragement. It's going to all be just showing up in your podcast app, one episode at a time, and you can listen to it while you're doing other things, folding laundry, running your errands, anything. So hope to see you there. Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about what to do when we're feeling behind, because over the last couple weeks, my husband actually had a resurgence of a back injury and has been laid up in bed. There's not really been much he can do except hobble to the bathroom and back, and he's just been in a lot of pain, and it's really thrown off our routines and systems. And I'm not someone who likes when that sort of thing happens. I really like predictability. I think that's true of a lot of people, but I know it's one of those things that's particularly for me, routine is a crutch. I think it's because I'm very ADHD and I have a hard time coming up with a new plan on the spot. And I count on my routines to keep me productive so that I don't forget something important. One thing leads to the next. So it's really discombobulating and stressful to me when there's a big change in routine. And I've had to come up with a lot of tools over the years to cope with that because life doesn't always let me keep my routines. And when I don't have my routines, I start feeling behind. So a couple things for this if you struggle with it. One of the things I really like to do is when I start feeling frantic and anxious, like I'm feeling behind, I like to step back and look at what are my thoughts that are leading to that feeling. And I often find that I've forgotten some important things. Like the first one is that time is something that is of this world. It is temporary. We're not always going to be affected by time because after this life, when we're in heaven, we are going to be caught up into eternity. So time is a temporary thing. And when I back up and I look at the big picture through that lens, that time is not going to matter in the long run, what is going to matter? The Bible says, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth. And I think that's a really helpful tool for looking at how we spend our time. Because what can we take with us to heaven? And it's almost nothing. The only thing we might possibly have in heaven, apart from God, is our relationships with other people who might be there. And love is going to be what lasts, what echoes through eternity. Relationships are the only eternal thing. So when I am ignoring my children's needs, when I'm ignoring my husband's needs, and worrying and spending all my time trying to rush around and get things done, I'm actually being counterproductive, because what that does is it tends to actually harm those relationships, the most important thing that I can do on earth. So when I'm feeling behind, the thought in my head might be, I'm never going to get this done. And that leads to a lot of anxiety and maybe even a sense of worthlessness. Like if it is something where I'm attaching my self-worth to what I'm getting done, it can undermine how I feel about myself, what kind of behavior does that lead to? It leads to me being short with the people that I love and that I should be loving, and undermines the whole point of everything I'm trying to get done. Like, why am I trying to clean my house? What's the whole point of a house? Is to provide an environment that is conducive to relationships. So now when I think about that, whatever's on my to-do list, if I don't do that, am I sinning? But if I am letting all of the things on my to-do list lead me to being unkind to my family, that's not okay. So what can we do about this? It's this idea that our thoughts lead to our feelings, and our feelings drive our actions, which drives our results. So we can actually plan out useful thoughts that lead to useful feelings, motivating feelings. And a couple of my favorite ones for a circumstance like this where I feel behind is, I have plenty of time, because God never runs out of time. God never runs out of anything. He has enough of everything. God can provide. He can make up that difference. Another one I like is, I can figure this out. Problems are not a life sentence. Usually we can come up with a new plan and adjust to the new circumstances. We can look at it, figure out why we're behind, and say, okay, what needs to change? Do my expectations need to change? Do my strategies need to change? Do I need to focus on finding more high impact things that take less time instead of, doing all the busy work stuff? Because usually when I'm being inefficient, there's a whole bunch of busy work going on that doesn't drive results in my life. Things like, tottering around my house, putting away one thing here, one thing there, but not really focusing or following a plan. So I can figure this out is such a useful thought. Another one, I can pause and reset. We're allowed to take a pause. We're allowed to breathe for a minute. And doing so sometimes makes us more efficient, because if our brain is trying to juggle so many thoughts, it bogs us down. Do you remember how old computers used to really inefficiently store information? So you had to do this thing called defragmenting. And what that did was it take these itty bits of information that were stashed everywhere and put them together into like a solid block. So you'd have bigger empty blocks. And I think our brains so often have to do that too. It's so powerful to just take a pause and defragment our brains. Let it finish sorting through all that information that's been coming that way, especially if there's been some sort of an adjustment we have to make. And then here's another one. This one I really love. This matters most. I can just surrender to the circumstances that God has allowed in my life and trust that He has a purpose to them, that what He wants me to focus on is very clear. It's not getting ahead. It's the people. So in all of that, when we remember that God is eternal, it's actually not possible for us to be behind. I wonder sometimes when He's looking down at us and He's just seeing how we have so much worry about all these random things. At the end of my life, I'm not going to look back and say, oh man, I wish that I had been better at washing the dishes. I'm just not. The dishes by then aren't even going to matter anymore. Those very same dishes might be in a dump somewhere. But my children, My husband, they are going to be somewhere. I'm going to be somewhere. From the very moment we're conceived, we're immortal. We're going to live forever. And so time management starts there. Productivity starts there. St. John of the Cross said, "In the evening of life, we will be judged on love alone." It's okay, Mama. It's okay if you're feeling stressed out, spread thin. Focus on love. Hello, guys. I'm so excited to see how many of you have already signed up for the Lenten podcast. If you haven't heard, I'm doing a special podcast for moms who are giving up social media. And the whole idea is that I can be there helping you and encouraging you when you're lonely, when you're trying to figure out how to do it in a realistic way. You don't have to actually open your browser to find connection, to figure out tips and tricks. It's all going to be right there in the podcast. We're going to work through all of Lent with a couple podcasts a week to just walk you through. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead, look in the show notes. You'll find the link to the sign up for that. I can't wait to see you there.